For more than 70 years, the US dollar has reigned as the undisputed king of global finance, shaping the world's economic landscape in ways both visible and hidden. Its influence stretches far beyond American borders, touching nearly every nation and industry on the planet. The dollar has been the currency of oil, the backbone of international debt, and the foundation of central bank reserves. It's the lifeblood of global trade, the standard by which other currencies are measured, and the safe haven in times of crisis. This dominance, often called dollar hegemony, has granted the United States immense power and privilege. It allows the US to borrow cheaply, influence global markets, and set the rules of international finance. But today, on June 26, 2025, a quiet yet profound challenge is underway. The world is witnessing the early stages of a shift that could redefine the balance of economic power for decades to come. From the bustling financial centers of Shanghai to the growing markets of Africa and Latin America, China is methodically building a new multipolar currency world, one where the dollar's supremacy is no longer taken for granted. At the heart of this strategy lies the Chinese yuan. This isn't a sudden revolution but a slow, calculated evolution. China is carefully laying the groundwork step by step to increase the yuan's global reach and acceptance. Rather than seeking to topple the dollar overnight, China is creating alternative pathways for trade and finance. Through new payment systems, bilateral agreements, and digital innovations, it's making it easier for nations to do business in yuan. As confidence in the dollar wavers due to economic uncertainty, rising debt, and shifting alliances, more nations are questioning the wisdom of relying solely on the greenback. The risks of overdependence are becoming harder to ignore. The conversation among global leaders and economists is no longer about if the dollar will be challenged, but when and by what forces. The world is preparing for a new era of currency competition. China is leveraging its status as the world's largest trading nation to encourage the use of the yuan in cross-border transactions, making it a more attractive option for its partners and allies. Understanding this monumental shift is crucial for anyone interested in the future of the global economy. The rules of the game are changing, and those who adapt will shape the next chapter of global finance. This is more than just a currency story, it's about the future architecture of global power, influence, and the very way nations interact on the world stage. The dollar's dominance has relied on America's economic size, stable markets, and trusted institutions. But recent years have seen that trust erode. US financial sanctions have shown countries like Russia and Iran that access to the dollar can be weaponized. Many nations are now seeking to de-dollarize, exploring alternatives like the yuan. Trade wars and shifts in US policy have created volatility, making partners question America's reliability. Concerns over US debt and inflation have led some central banks to diversify their reserves. Political polarization and debt ceiling standoffs have further shaken confidence. The dollar remains dominant, but the cracks are real. These cracks are openings China is working to exploit. The dollar's wobble isn't a collapse, but it's giving momentum to the yuan. For the first time in decades, serious competition is emerging. China's push to internationalize the yuan is a coordinated campaign. The People's Bank of China has allowed the yuan to trade in a wider band, balancing flexibility and stability. China encourages trading partners to settle in yuan, striking deals with energy exporters like Russia and Saudi Arabia. Its Petro-Yuan initiative directly challenges the petrodollar. China has built a network of currency swap lines with over 40 countries, providing yuan liquidity and building a yuan-centric ecosystem. Finally, China is pioneering digital currency with the ECNY, aiming to make cross-border transactions faster and bypass dollar-dominated systems like SWIFT. This digital leap is perhaps China's most ambitious move. The goal: build the financial infrastructure of the future on its own terms. The yuan's rise is a patient, multi-front game. China's push for the yuan is a direct response to both shifting global trends and the country's own growing economic maturity. Over the past decade, China has transformed from a manufacturing powerhouse into a global economic leader, and now it's looking to match its financial influence with its commercial reach. The perceived reliability of the US dollar is at a historic low, with concerns about inflation, rising debt, and political gridlock in the United States. This uncertainty is creating a rare window of opportunity for the yuan to step onto the world stage as a credible alternative. China is capitalizing on a growing global sentiment of de-dollarization, as more countries and businesses seek to reduce their dependence on the dollar for international trade and reserves. As the world's second-largest economy and the top trading partner for over 120 countries, China has a natural platform to promote its currency. Its vast trade network gives it leverage to encourage partners to settle transactions in yuan instead of dollars. Conducting most of its trade in dollars exposes China to risks, such as currency fluctuations and potential sanctions, as well as inefficiencies in cross-border payments. By shifting to the yuan, China can reduce these vulnerabilities and gain more control over its financial destiny. Promoting the yuan not only aligns China's financial influence with its commercial power, but also strengthens its position in global negotiations and economic partnerships. The yuan's share of global reserves is still small, but it's growing steadily. Its use in global payments is hitting record highs, and more international transactions are being settled in yuan than ever before. Central banks in countries like Brazil, Israel, and Singapore are increasing their yuan holdings, signaling growing trust in the Chinese currency and a shift in the global financial landscape. China's ambition is to become a global hub for finance and innovation. A widely accepted currency is a crucial part of that vision, enabling Chinese companies and investors to operate more freely on the world stage. A global yuan would lower borrowing costs for Chinese businesses, attract more international investment, and increase China's influence in setting global financial rules. The current blend of dollar uncertainty and Chinese economic strength is the ideal launchpad for the yuan's rise. The world is watching to see if China can seize this unique moment in history. With confidence and strategic planning, China is seizing the moment to elevate the yuan and its own global standing. China isn't just competing with old rules, it's writing new ones. At the forefront is the digital yuan, or ECNY, a central bank digital currency now in large-scale pilot programs. The ECNY aims to create a payment system that's efficient, controllable, and independent of global financial plumbing. For international trade, the ECNY could settle transactions instantly, bypassing SWIFT and reducing costs. China hopes to embed the yuan into the fabric of future trade. Alongside the ECNY, China is exploring yuan-backed stablecoins for global crypto trading and DeFi, but digital ambitions face hurdles. Other countries may hesitate to adopt the ECNY due to surveillance concerns. For stablecoins, trust and transparency are essential but difficult to guarantee. The digital frontier is powerful, but global trust remains the key challenge. Technology alone won't make the yuan global. Despite China's determined efforts to elevate the yuan on the world stage, the currency faces a series of significant and complex obstacles that continue to slow its progress. One of the most formidable barriers is China's strict capital controls, which tightly limit the flow of money in and out of the country. These controls are designed to protect the domestic economy, but they directly clash with the openness and flexibility required for a currency to become a true global reserve. International investors who drive global finance need the freedom to move capital easily and without restriction, something the US dollar has long provided. The ability to enter and exit markets at will is essential for building trust and encouraging widespread use. As a result, the yuan's global acceptance and liquidity remain limited. The vast majority of international contracts, trade deals, and financial transactions are still denominated in dollars, not yuan, making it difficult for the Chinese currency to gain traction. Yuan-denominated markets also lack the depth, transparency, and robust infrastructure that characterize US financial markets. Investors often find fewer options and less information when dealing in yuan assets. Trust in financial institutions is absolutely crucial. The United States offers legal transparency, a well-established rule of law, and an independent central bank. In contrast, China's system is often seen as opaque, with decisions subject to political influence and sudden changes. This uncertainty makes investors nervous. They worry about the reliability of the rule of law, the risk of abrupt policy shifts, and the potential for government intervention in markets. Overcoming this deep-seated trust deficit is perhaps China's biggest and most persistent challenge on the path to yuan internationalization. Progress has been cautious and measured. Beijing is acutely aware that opening up too quickly could trigger destabilizing capital flight, threaten economic stability, and undermine the very growth it seeks to protect. This creates a fundamental dilemma. The same controls that help ensure stability at home also inhibit the global trust and openness needed for the yuan to thrive internationally. In many ways, the financial Great Wall China has built to protect itself now stands as a barrier to its own ambitions. For these reasons, the yuan's rise on the global stage will likely be slow, incremental, and closely watched by markets around the world. The world is watching closely to see if China can strike the delicate balance between maintaining control and embracing the openness required for true global leadership. A stronger yuan would reshape the global economy. For trade, it could mean lower costs and less exposure to dollar swings for China's partners. A multipolar currency system could enhance global stability by reducing over-reliance on the dollar. But the transition could bring volatility as currency blocks compete. For consumers, prices for Chinese goods might stabilize, and travel could become easier with digital yuan wallets. The biggest impact, a shift in global power. The US would lose some of its exorbitant privilege and ability to use financial sanctions. Shanghai and Hong Kong could become new financial centers, and investors would need to understand China's policies as well as America's. The world's financial center of gravity could move east. Global banks are watching the yuan's rise with caution and interest. They're wary of China's opaque regulations and capital controls, but can't ignore the opportunity. As China's markets open, banks see new revenue and want access to its vast economy. Major banks are expanding in China, launching products for yuan-based transactions. While the dollar remains dominant, banks are building capacity to handle yuan, creating trading desks, and advising clients. They're bridging the gap between the dollar system and the emerging yuan ecosystem. Central banks are also diversifying reserves into yuan, not abandoning the dollar but hedging their bets. This gradual shift signals that the yuan is being taken seriously. The slow accumulation of yuan by official institutions provides stable demand. The world's financial system is preparing for a future where the yuan matters. The yuan's challenge to the dollar is far from over. Can China maintain a stable exchange rate, control capital flows, and have an independent monetary policy? Something may have to give. Will Beijing open its capital account, risking instability for global influence? Can China build the trust needed for the yuan to become a true safe haven asset? The US response will also shape the outcome. Will it adapt or resist? The future may not be one currency replacing another, but a fragmented system with different currencies for different purposes. The dollar's unipolar moment is facing its biggest test. The answers to these questions will define the next era of global finance.